I am resident of Collinwood, Joel Sains for YouTube. This is my buddy Butch Rosenbalm. We're here to discuss Jason Voorhees. And if you're going to ask what happened to we're going to do a movie. We're going to postpone that and wait for our buddy Patrick McCrae. So we're going to discuss Pamela Voorhees' favorite son and her only son that some kin counselor lost track of, son of a bitch. And, so Butch, here's my first question to you. Did or did not Jason drown?
Well, here's my long-standing interpretation of that.
Okay.
He went underwater, but he didn't die.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Under the water, went down the lake a little bit, maybe found by some crazy mountain people or forest people or whatever's, or were some people. Honestly, I'll kid aside on that part. And thought, Jason's not right up here. Might have been underwater long enough to make it even worse. So, he thought, oh, mommy didn't want me. I need to learn how to live out here. And so if you're asking, did I think he died? Of course not. Dead people don't grow and become adults. So usually not in horror movies.
That is true. That is true. I agree with your interpretation to a point here. Let me add to it. Because in the original Friday the 13th, we see a lot of things. Number one, it rains. And I gather when Jason went swimming, the lake was sort of swollen. And when a lake is swollen, water will tend to push you downstream. And that's what I think happened. Here's my other theory too. I think whoever saw him go in the lake was somebody who just saw him go underwater, and they said, Jason's drowned. Like, they assumed that he drowned, and they didn't see him no more, they just assumed that he did drown. Here's
Right.
the problem with a drowning. When you drown, generally, your body floats. Now if you drown in a river that has a steady, good current, that might be a problem. They might not find your body for a while or at all. Now in the ocean, that's a whole nother matter. But with a lake, your body will get sometimes pushed downstream and it'll come to a body of land. Now with a lake, river. With a river, your body might never get, because here's the thing about rivers. Usually one river connects to another and another. Mm-hmm. So your body being found in a river is less likely than it being found in a lake. And usually there's a logical explanation for it not being found in a lake. And when they said, and here's the beautiful thing about Friday the 13th Part 1, you know this too. When they said, well, the boy's not there, we didn't find no boy. The police are telling you without saying it, hey, we dragged that lake.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't saying that.
Did they?
Yeah,
I think they looked for him. I don't think they dragged the lake. I think they looked for him.
Okay. You don't think they actually dragged the lake?
I don't mean this as rude as it may come out, but let's see. Jason was born around 1950, 1951. I forget exactly. I guarantee you someone made the comment, it's just one retard. And
they probably did.
We'll walk. Nobody cares. And, dude, I started going to school in the 70s, and that, that's 20 years later. And I heard things like that about some students who, that I don't really like that term, but, that they used to call what we'd now call mentally challenged. And some that did deserve it, some that didn't. And it was kind of an apathy. It's like, why are you wasting your time to teach that elephant how to dance? All you're doing is wasting your time and making the elephant mad. So, no, I figure they looked probably not hard. And like you said, probably another kid saw him, go underwater. Hey, when I was a kid, I slipped on a rock. I went underwater, and my uncle and my dad both went to the lake, and I don't know which one pulled me out, but I think it was my uncle, but I'm not sure. So yeah, he went into the water. He got pulled down, and somehow was able to survive. I don't know much about the fauna and flora of New Jersey, but obviously he found a supply of food. I also had an idea of maybe Pamela was so crazy she was leaving food out for him, and he found it.
That I would buy.
And she's just like, "Oh, it's just an animal, but I have to leave it for poor Jason."
See, I buy a lot of that too because Pamela, by the way, Pamela Voorhees did nothing wrong in the first movie. Absolutely nothing. Let me just say that. She was seeking for revenge for a son she thought she lost. It's perfectly normal what she did. Yeah, I'm going to go to hell. I agree with you. I do think Pamela was so crazy because we see her in the first movie how crazy easily she snaps. So I do think she's crazy enough to leave food out for her son. Oh, he could still be. And now anybody could come up and take food. Hell, a bear could come up and take food. It's funny. My former teacher, who I have on Facebook, she had put a bird feeder in her yard, and a bear came in her yard.
Wow.
So after a while, after the bear left was gone, she removed the bird feeder. It's like, so when I say anything, if you live near a wooded area, anything could come up and get food if you leave it out. I mean anything,
Yeah.
Man or beast, or even starving person. Here's what I think happened to Jason post non-drowning. I think he washed up. The first person he kills is not what we see in part 2.
Oh, agreed.
I think the first person he kills is somebody who has food for survival. I think he does a lot of sorry. What he does at first is for just natural survival. Instinct, the first thing you'll hear about wilderness is instinct tends to kick in for most people. That your natural is to what? Feed. If you need to feed and you're fighting for survival, that's your first instinct, is to survive at all costs. So maybe when Jason got out of the water, he may have just been naturally, maybe he was passed out for maybe a day. We don't know. We don't know how long he was like unconscious. I don't think he was conscious when he came to shore. When he wakes up, he's hungry. He feels like he's starving. He sees somebody with food and he sneaks up on them and kills them and just takes their food. But because the thing of it is, they said in the there were some murders up at the campground, but I do think there's been more murders that nobody saw. Because in the woods, I've been watching this whole missing 411 thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I don't think so.
Where these people go missing in these national parks and shit, and it's like, you either A, they're not found, B, where they're found is someplace that was looked for them before, and they're found in a very peculiar position and stuff. It's just really weird. You'll have to check it out. I'll send you something here when we get done. But I think with the difference with Friday the 13th is the reason you don't see a bunch of bodies from Jason is because he hides them, whether it's in that cabin of his or he just buries them. Again, nobody's the only people going up to the campgrounds for the longest time was the Christie family because they owned the damn thing. So the Christies, they say, went crazy and broke. I don't know if they went crazy. I do agree they went broke because I think wrongful death lawsuits are hard to fight as hell, and you're going to pay a lot. You're going to pay out the ass. Because I think the two camp counselors that were killed by Pamela in the beginning, those two, whoever's parents they were, probably sued the camp. That's
Mhm.
probably what drove the Christies broke in the first movie. And then you see Steve Christie, who is putting all this money back into the camp. You know, he bought it from his parents. And I do think he gave his parents money to look legitimate. Do, do I believe that Steve's parents went crazy? No. Do I think they went broke? I think they got filed for bankruptcy. You know, I think they sold the what rights they had to the camp to their son. And I think when you look at Jason himself, who's out in the wilderness surviving, he doesn't. If someone's out in the wilderness surviving off of the land, whether it's animals and such, they don't need a camp. They don't need the food in the camp. They're living off the land. I'm not saying they wouldn't prefer the food of the campground,
Right.
but they're not really going to care when they've been living off the way of the land for how many years Jason's been actually alive in the woods. They're not going to give a shit. They're so used to the environment they've basically made for themselves. They're not going to care about some food at the campground. Now they're going to care about people. Maybe they care about people being there. They're going to end up killing them. That's sort of what Friday the 13th Part 2 is. You could say it's sort of a repeat of 2, but I do like the fact that what they do with Part 2 is Jason's a legend. Jason Jason is just a legend. He's just a story that's been told
Mhm.
that's, you know, and it's something I've asked my friend Daniel Culver and other people. So I asked you this, Butch. How do you prove a legend exists with
You
Jason?
you can't.
You know,
You can't. It's just like, how do you prove an opinion wrong?
yeah,
It's an opinion. It's a legend. I mean, short of going up in the mountains and hunting. Oh, I don't know, uh, Paul Bunyan down and bringing his corpse out. You can't. So for the most part, the him going down the lake, he has to. I feel like he has to meet somebody.
yeah,
Maybe some crazy mountain man, survival man type that that finds him and takes pity on him and raises him and teaches him how to live. I feel like part of his killing, either his mentor, let's call him, or just killing animals to have food to survive. That's one of the reasons that he doesn't really look at killing humans as a big thing, because not that he's using them for meat, but when you get into that survival mode, it's fight or flight. You don't really
yeah.
start thinking about, well, I shouldn't have done that.
You know who they should have had play like the woodsman who sort of teaches Jason survival. And this would have you'll appreciate this because I grew up watching him in reruns. Grizzly Adams would have made a world of sense.
I think Grizzly Adams would have been dead by then.
Yeah, probably.
I think
But
it was Crazy Ralph, and that's why Crazy Ralph is crazy.
that makes sense too. I like how the police are going up to look for Crazy Ralph, and they ask, "Was he dangerous?" Well, every time he gets drunk, he gets his call. It's like I hear the word drunk, but I don't hear the word yes, yes, sir. He's dangerous. Yes, ma'am, he's dangerous. So, Butch, when you first saw Crazy Ralph, did you think he was like crazy a killer, or no? He's just a town crazy.
Town crazy. There's too many of them around this area. At least Ralph was amusing and harmless. I, honestly, crazy. I was very upset when Crazy Ralph got killed because I like the character. I mean, he was arguably the smartest person because he's like, looking, you're doomed, you're doomed. You can't escape Camp Blood. It's like he's like the spiritual grandfather of I think the character's name was Randy in the Scream films that explained the rules.
Yeah,
it's the guy that nobody listens to. Right. If y'all would just listen to him, I mean, I think we talked about in the Terminator. I can't remember if we talked about actually in the video, about a crossover with Friday the 13th and Jason and the Terminator. But here's how you stop that. You leave Crystal Lake.
Yeah.
You leave Crystal alone, you're good. It's like, don't go to Hatfield on October 31st. Don't go into Crystal Lake. Don't, you can't really say don't live on Elm Street because I'm sure some of the victims that family had moved, but don't let your parents kill a guy by burning him to death. At least have the decency to shoot him.
Yeah.
But, it's in my mind, in his mind, Crystal Lake is almost a holy place because it's the last place that he saw his mom.
Yeah.
If he technically even my question was did he recognize her after however many years? Because being a little mentally challenged child, he sees mom, he's gonna run to mom. Yeah, I had a thought who might have trained him. Elias.
Yeah.
Voorhees, who needs a weapon of some.
See, I could see that, like, maybe Jason was just found by his dad. When once upon a time I wrote a Friday the 13th story, and I had Elias work as a survival expert, training the kids how to survive in the woods. And that's the thing. I do think there's something missing from Jason's sort of past that maybe his if you get into the whole Book of the Dead thing, with just Jason goes to hell. No, okay, we don't want to get okay, good. Now with Elias, I do think you could say Elias was a survival expert who may have taught his son how to survive in the woods and maybe how to kill people, or maybe Jason just took that and took the survival tactics and then applied it to, okay, I'm going to kill people. Who knows? Maybe his first victim was his dad in general. We don't know. Jason is such a tricky character to a degree. I don't mean who he kills because, if you go to Camp Crystal Lake, just make sure you have your life insurance policy up to date. Argue with your life insurance. Hey, do I have killed by a homicidal maniac? No, put that down.
I had an idea for a short film where it's a guy who has cancer and decides to go to Crystal Lake to commit suicide by Jason.
I could see that too. I
can't make it to Halloween, but I can make it to Camp Crystal Lake.
That's about it too. He doesn't tell his family where he's going. He doesn't tell anybody where he's going. He just goes. Oh, that would be good. I'd watch that. I'd pay to watch that too. Something wrong with me. What did you now Friday the 13th, the final chapter? We know it wasn't. But when you first saw it, did you think, okay, this is over? They're never making another?
Well, I was a kid when I first saw it, so yeah, I kind of did fall for it.
Yeah.
As an adult, I could look at it and go, these movies make too much money for them to give it up. I mean, they spend like 1-2 million and they get 20, 30, 40. Yeah, they're not dumb. But as a kid, yeah, I thought, and bringing back Tom Savini and all the others to make that. I mean, that's one of the better films in the way they do things. And you get to the this is for me, that's the start. 4 is the start of the best of the prime Friday the 13th film. 4, 5, and 6, as far as I'm concerned, are the best.
Yeah.
And leading into that, that's the good stuff. And then after that, you just until you get to Freddy versus Jason, and then it goes. Oh, actually, Jason X too. I know a lot of people trash Jason X. It's just so silly. I love it. I just sit back and laugh my butt off. It's a hoot.
I've often defended Jason Takes Manhattan. Can I give you my theory on that one?
Yeah.
I literally, because when you watch the movie, now there has been a Friday the 13th character that has had a weak backstory involving Jason for part 3, I would say, has a like, okay, I guess. But this Remy is a very strange character in part 8, and everything that she says happened, and when you watch the boat sequence, it feels like a goddamn dream.
Mm.
Like nothing feels. I'm not trying to like sound strange because again, it's a fictional horror movie, but to sound sort of, you and me and Patrick, we've always said, hey, this feels like something real. Well, that's my problem with Friday the 13th Part 8. Nothing feels real. Like Jason coming back to life, the boat sequence. It's like it all feels like this is just some dream. It's like Remy's story is like, okay, so when you were a kid, you went to Chris, and Jason's description is off, by the way. I get this is the eighth installment. You could say they just forgot what Jason looked like, in the first movie, but everything just feels like, and even the ending of the movie just does not feel real. Like Jason getting killed by sludge, and by the way, becoming a kid again. I'm thinking, if I didn't know any better, I'd say this is like, and I know again they I don't know when they were talking Freddy versus Jason. I want to say it was probably during Jason Goes to Hell, maybe before that.
7.
Oh, 7. Okay,
Original
so
team going that was that was based on the original script where Tina's character was going to be Freddy. That's why she's got various psychic powers like Freddy.
Okay, so would I be too far off to say that Jason Takes Manhattan may also have a hint of Freddy to it?
Oh yeah, I got I no, I really don't have a problem with that. Just like I don't have a problem with 7, or excuse me, X. I do have a problem with Goes to Hell just because I don't like this. I realize trying to do something different, new, and I always try to applaud doing something new and different. There's nothing more annoying than getting excited to go see a film and you watch it and you're like, oh, it's just like the previous one. That all being said, if you make a movie called Friday the 13th, Jason needs to be in it, not people looking like Jason when they look in the mirror, or the brain damaged mortician suddenly eating Jason's heart for no reason.
Didn't you hear the heart though? Didn't you hear the heart going, "Eat me, eat me, eat me"?
I did not. I really didn't.
Like there's the beat of the heart. It sounds like, again, I want to make this real clear. The heart is not literally talking; it doesn't have a mouth, but with the beat of the heart is going, "Eat me, eat me, eat me." Like, and I'm like, the heart is telling, and the guy does, like Butch said, the petition eats the heart.
Someone asked me, might have been Patrick, might have just been other friends, and they said, okay, you've been given the green light, X number of dollars to make a new Friday the 13th. How do you rationalize all, the toxic waste turning into a kid, Goes to Hell, X, and Freddy versus Jason? I'm like, somewhere pretty early in the script, there's a line we're going, well, didn't he go to space? And didn't he go to New York and get turned into a kid? And somebody who knows what I'm talking about goes, man, that's just stories they made up.
Yeah.
That way you can still enjoy those films, but they're just, mine would pick up, maybe, here's the thing. 6 going into 7, I feel like doesn't flow well. It's like 6, Jason Voorhees is like freaking Frankenstein's monster on steroids.
Man.
And everybody in my sound of my voice, if you've never watched Friday the 13th Part 6 in black and white, watch it in black and white. It is a straight up horror, monster movie. But I get my movie would probably, and I know that I'm biased because 6 is my favorite, because 7 just to me doesn't flow as well. I mean, I like the idea of how she brings him back on accident, but oh yeah, I heard he fought heard he fought a girl with I might even say I think it was her name was Carrie. Just to throw that. No, he fought Jason Voorhees. I mean, excuse me. No, he fought Freddy Krueger, and no, he went into space. The problem is 6 to me is the last one they really take serious.
Yeah.
And after that, they wanted a click, something a hook to bring people in. And unfortunately, I always feel sorry for poor Kane Hodder because he's probably the best Jason, and he got some of this god awful scripts and stories, and you're like, who thought this was a good idea?
Yeah. Like when they did Jason Part 7, I'm like, this is Jean Grey versus Jason. So it felt like, it felt like Jean Grey going up against Jason, which I understand the concept of a girl who has psychic ability. But let me tell you where this movie, here you have an abusive father, and his last moment before dying is smacking the girl's mother. And his redemption is pulling Jason back down into the lake. And I was talking about this with Mark Gilman and Daniel Culver, and I said, I'll tell you how I changed that. It wouldn't be her dad. It would be all his victims coming up from the lake and grabbing his ass and pulling him down. Some of them are they look decomposed and stuff, but it's like, this girl has psychic ability. She's telling the dead, hey, you want your revenge? Here it is. Come get him. And they come up sort of like a George A. Romero crazy, like just come up and grab him. And they do.
And what would be great is if you do that, is if like you could have somebody that looks like Mitch with the curly hair from 3, and Fox from 3, and various the sheriff from 6, and whoever else you want to pull up, and they all look like they don't have to be the exact same actor, but just even dressed like that. Yeah, that would be pretty good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed 6. I'm with you. 7's a fun watch.
It's not. It just
It's
one of the ideals. To me, like I said, it's one to me on the ideals. The problem is, and it makes me think of the James Bond films. One of the people involved with the James Bond film says we have to tell the exact same story a slightly different way.
Yeah.
And if you watch 1 and 2, people don't realize 1 and 2 are completely different. Number 1 is a murder mystery, and there's actually not that much blood until the very end. 2 is really when we get into the slasher. 3, but and everybody says they're so similar, and I'm like, well, they kind of are, but the story keeps progressing. We have 1, and then 2 is Jason getting revenge, and then trying to run those people off, and then the people keep coming in 3, and same thing in 4, and so it is the same story, told a different way, but it also isn't, because we're progressing from through the timeline. And that, for me, that works up until 6, and then 7. I'm not a psychologist. You're not a psychologist, as far as I know.
No.
But even if you're working with someone that needs help, and you think, hey, they need to get out and get some fresh air, are you going to take them somewhere that is has a notorious urban legend, if nothing else, about a mass killer being there? Remind me to not go to that guy for any sort of psychological help, because it sounds like he needs some.
Bringing Jason back to fight your psychic patient is going to have some really interesting results. Not so great for you, but really interesting results. I do think that's the thing too. Is 7? It's like, okay, I could have bought him just take, because again, it's going off 6. They did change the name to Camp Forest Green in 6, so maybe when they changed it back, no one had thought about, Crystal Lake, it being called Crystal Lake, and maybe he just, instead of making him a shit heel, I would have made him, hey, I brought you out here for peace and quiet to, like, talk to me. Like this, I wanted to bring you back here because you said you killed your dad. Did you honestly? Like, like, I do feel it would have been better if you would have had him examine, well, did you really kill your dad? Like, he doesn't really want to believe she killed her dad. I think that would have been a better sort of story. It's not as interesting. And then all of a sudden, she's thinking about him. She's thinking about him, thinking about her dad, and then does accidentally bring Jason out. And I think that would have been interesting, but not at. I like some of what 7 does, but the one thing I'll say is with 7 is the effects were so good, like the telekinesis effects were so cool. It made the fight between her and Jason all the more fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fight between Jason and her is just pure entertaining. Like, that's the part you want to get to when you're watching 7. All the other people getting killed, it's like, okay, they're dead. You're killing. I got a question for 2 for you. So Jenny in part 2, was she pregnant to Paul?
Very well could be.
I asked this because there's sort of subtle hints that she is. She's late coming there. He goes, you're late. She goes, I know. And she goes, Paul, I got to tell you something. And then they kiss and then it cuts away. It's like, what did she tell him?
That would make sense. And especially with all the, shall we say, extracurricular activities the counselors are getting into.
Yeah, in part 2. Is all the films like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like the first 6 especially, like we know 7 and 8 are do they all take place on different parts of the lake? You think it's all just Crystal Lake?
I think 1 and 2 take place in the same area. 3 starts spreading over. If you've played the Friday the 13th video game, haven't you?
Yeah.
What is Higgins Hall or whatever? I don't think that is part of Camp Crystal Lake itself, but it is adjacent to it.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think everything takes place in Camp Crystal Lake, because I mean they talk about in 4 about the cabin, and either something said about who owns it or they bought it or something. So that's, I mean, I don't know how things are in Jersey, but down here in little old Tennessee, usually nice places around the lake usually are pretty expensive, and it's a good place to have land to sell to people.
Yeah, usually I think it's pretty much the same thing everywhere. If you live by the lake, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. I will say this with Jason, I think he's a really interesting killer. I actually like the sack bash Jason, but I love when he gets the hockey mask in 3. It's a very, very clever how they do it. They have a character named Shelly who loves to pull pranks, and it comes back to bite him in the ass in a big way. So, what did you think of the transition from sack mask to hockey mask?
I hate the term quantum leap, but it's a quantum leap. I mean, the sackcloth or whatever you want to call it, that was made me think of The Town That Dreaded Sundown.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's one thing. I always call Friday Part 2 Jason Hayseed Jason, and he's just a big old country bumpkin. And it's almost like Jethro Bodine got a lobotomy and somehow became violent or something. But that hockey mask, the thing is it's so, even down here in the South, where especially back then hockey was not real well known, everybody knew what a hockey mask was.
Yeah.
But by the same token, it's familiar, but by the same token, it's not familiar, and it's very inhuman, and it hides so much. It's almost like how some people claim to be they're scared of clowns because makeup hides the normal social cues and recognizable features. It's kind of like that with the hockey mask, in my opinion. You know what this is, and it should be familiar, but we'll look at it and you're like, this guy ain't scoring goals.
I was at a fair once, and there was this clown putting face makeup on people. Like, hey, what do you want me to paint you as? And I said, can I ask you a question? He said, sure. I said, why do I paint people's faces? He goes, honestly, the reason I'm doing this is because so many people are scared of clowns because of the face paint. He said, we're putting it on you to show you this is not a scare. It's not scary. Like, if you'd like to look exactly like me, I'll paint you that way. He goes, this took me this long to put on me. It won't take me as long to put on you as long as you hold still. It feels a little funny, but it's normal. And that's something he said to me, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So back to like what you're saying is, the paint, it makes you think, oh, they're hiding something, underneath the paint. With the hockey mask, you can't see the eyes, you can't see the face at all. This hockey mask that they use in 3 doesn't get destroyed until part 7, which I was shocked they did. I think that's one of the most shocking things about 7. Other than, I know there was a lot of censorship with the blood, which I know some people say it ruins the movie. I feel it doesn't. You know what I mean? I enjoy 7 for what they're doing. I do think I see a lot more of the censorship now than I did when I was little, because I wasn't paying attention to all the censorship back when I was a kid. Because I was like, censorship? What's that? Oh,
You wished you knew. What is it? I wished I knew then what I know now.
yeah, pretty much. It's like, because
I have to correct you there with your hockey maskness.
okay, good.
And 4,
Okay.
he dies and they take him away. We don't know what happens to his original hockey mask, because as people that watch the films know, 5 is the fill-in.
Yeah.
6 at the very beginning. Tommy Jarvis and Horshack go and dig him up, and Tommy has a hockey mask that I feel like we're supposed to think it's the original, but I don't feel like it is the original.
Yeah.
I never have thought that. So in my mind, the original mask disappears at 4. Maybe he's buried with it. Maybe they burn it. Maybe a collector buys it. I don't know. Because like I said, 5's a fill-in, and then Tommy throws in 6 throws one into his casket. So in my mind, I don't. It may not come flat out and say it, because as I recall on 6, when he throws that mask in, it doesn't have the cut. So in my mind, I could be wrong. I'm not going to argue the whole point, because
Right.
I don't remember those. But in my mind, it's 2 different masks. Actually, 3 if you want to be technical.
The mask disappeared because Butch Rosenbalm has it in his house. No.
Look back there. We in our Western series, I've mentioned the horror Western role-playing game Deadlands a lot. I so wanted to bring in like a Michael Myers mask, a hockey mask, a Freddy Krueger glove. I actually played a character based on Ash from Evil Dead, so there's already chainsaws in there. But the problem is like, you put the mask on and you're not in control of your character anymore. You become a killer. So They actually have a knife, and it's implied to be the knife that caused Jack the Ripper to happen. So that started making me thinking, well, you got to have a hockey mask. And it's like, and the thing would be, in my mind, it only works around Crystal Lake. If you wear it in Michigan, it's a hockey mask.
Man.
So if you're a collector, it's a great thing to have. Just don't wear it to Crystal Lake.
Have you ever seen the music video by the Americans, Every Life I Take?
I don't think so.
I'll send it to you when we're done here. It's hilarious. But what did you think of Roy Burns in part 5?
If you're going to say Pamela did nothing wrong and one, Roy did things wrong, but all kidding aside, I understood why he did it.
Yeah.
Come up and your son who you apparently abandoned, and there's one scene, and I swear you can see the body, and I swear his hand is laying on his back, like part of his arm has been cut off, and his arm is laying on the back. You can see the head, you can see the back, and like you can see a hand. And it's just like, I mean, for just a second, let me be just serious. Think about that as a parent. You come across your child, and it's been killed and dismembered by some nut job with an axe.
Yeah.
And, Roy, I've read a few of the novels. I don't know them real well. I always wonder if there was more about his backstory about, did Roy have issues? Did he date Pamela for a while? What, other than just going, hey, I want to use the local legend, which, when you say it like that, it makes you think of like Scooby-Doo. That would be funny. They pull off the mask and it really is Jason. But, Roy, for a mass, I guess mass murder. Well, no, serial killer, because he doesn't kill them all at one time, to use the technical term. At the very least, I understand his rationale and his reason for doing it. Not saying it's right, of course.
Every time I watch part 5, I feel like I'm watching the great silence of the Friday the 13th franchise, where the protagonist doesn't really talk. He has maybe one or two lines, and then he's done. I actually like somewhat mute Tommy Jarvis because the writers were very smart to give him very little to no lines, because it builds the suspicion of maybe this is Tommy doing the killings.
Yeah, they did a really good job of that.
Like the way they filmed the setup sequence, it's like if Roy Burns just cuts and runs, Tommy's ass is getting arrested. I mean, literally. That's how convinced everybody. I think the Pam lady, the Reggie Reckless. I think everybody's convinced Tommy did it.
Not Reggie. He's the only one I'll argue.
Okay.
Because Reggie was a lot like us as a kid. Oh, you got masks, and he all of a sudden, it's like when I was a kid and we go over to my parents would go over to their friend's house, and their older son has comic books. Like, you got comic books? Can I read them? Reggie's one of us, and I really wish someone would do a film with him. I have to admit, teenage and maybe or early 20s Butch watching 5, Pam, as far as I'm concerned, Pam was and still is the most attractive female in the Friday the 13th franchise.
Yeah.
There's something about her I've always liked, but it leads into one of the worst errors. And soon after I say this, you'll never not see it. When she's running from Jason and it's raining, she starts off with this sweater tied around her around her neck, but I mean, like they used to do back in the 80s. Yeah. Kind of like we could tie a cape now. And then she's running through the forest, and her sweater's gone. You're like, well, okay, it got pulled off because she's doing all the stupid shit, falling, and it's ripping. And then when she leaves the forest, guess what? Her sweater's back. And that's, things like that is why I never never really took these movies too serious. It was just intended for something to entertain you and make a little money, and that kind of stuff just ties into that. It's not like you don't have the social, political, religious, ethnology tropes coming through George Romero. And I mean, I love George Romero, but I don't watch Friday the 13th for George Romero film. So that just gave me a great idea. We start taking great directors of horror: George Romero, John Carpenter, Tobe Hooper, Wes Craven, and they do a film in somebody else's genre. We don't ask John Carpenter to make a Friday the 13th film because, there's not a whole lot of diff between Friday the 13th and Halloween in a broad spectrum. Before anybody gets all upset, I'm more of a Jason fan than a Michael fan. But
well, they turned, as a Halloween fan, they turned to Michael somewhat into Jason with 4, like the shotgun through the groin and shit. It's like people say Friday the 13th. The one thing I heard growing up was Friday the 13th. People would say Friday the 13th ripped off of Halloween. I say ripped off is a strong word, So I went and watched. I'm thinking, ripped off? Like, what movie are you watching? Like I'm a Halloween fan. I can say no, they didn't rip off from us. You could say we inspired their movie because it's a holiday movie. But,
holiday slasher, yeah.
Yeah, but did Friday the 13th rip off of Halloween? No, not at all.
Well, if we're going to start talking about ripping off, let's talk. What is it? Bay of Blood by Bava and Psycho. I mean, if we're going to start talking about that, let's break out the big guns. I mean, it's a progression. No one. I mean, if I could dig it out if you want to see it, but the Crystal Lake Memories. Sean Cunningham says, he saw how much money Halloween made, and he's like, okay, everybody's doing, what's the next holiday?
Yeah.
And he was part, he wanted to make some money. That's what a producer does. So yeah, I agree with inspired. Now, a friend of mine, he's a big, my friend Paul Carson, he's a big Halloween fan also. And we went and saw the 2 Rob Zombie films together. And when we saw the first Rob Zombie Halloween, we got through. He goes, "What'd you think?" I said, "Man, that was the best Friday the 13th movie I've never seen before." And the Rob Zombie Michael Myers, and I'm sure a lot of people are going, but the Rob Zombie Michael Myers is brutal.
Yeah, he is.
I kept feeling like I was watching Jason from Part 6. I mean, it just specifically the scene where he takes the chick and they're in the RV and he just rams her face through the wall. I mean, that's what Rob Zombie's Michael Myers made me think of.
I think what Rob does really well is he's trying to make Michael Myers his own character. And in every way he is. Because throughout the film, he's showing you the young boy and he's doing these over-shoulder Dean Cundy shots. I've said this, Rob Zombie out Dean Cundy. And yes, I'll burn in hell as I say this. He really did. He did a beautiful job cinematography-wise. And because his as much as the dialogue tells you the story, so does the camera work. And you sort of see Daniel, for instance, Fag, I want to say, the young boy. You see,
I can't believe how it's pronounced, but
yeah, you sort of, when I see Taylor Made, I see the young boy. When I see the young boy, I see Taylor Made. Rob did a great job with the camera work transitioning that. So you would see that sort of, here's the monster. And it really was a monster.
Where not to totally derail this conversation, where I feel like Rob messed up is number one, the family is trailer park trash. I mean, just pure white trash. And Rob is not really good at dialogue because he likes to drop an F-bomb in about every other sentence. I presume around his house, him and Sherry, that's what their conversations are like. I effing this and I effing that, and here's my effing phone. What are you effing doing, Joel? Are you effing out of your effing mind? And it's just like, dude. he needs a script doctor, in my opinion. Cut out about 115 of the F-bombs, pep it up with some dialogue. I mean, we can't pull Lee Brackett out to help, but just somebody to tighten that up. And I didn't care why Michael was the way he was. That was, it's kind of like, it would be like me being a fan, and of course, if I were famous and a good musician, finally making my George Romero movie, and I tell you why the zombies come back. That is immaterial. George didn't care. John didn't care why Michael. He other than he's evil. That's all you need to know.
Man.
And that's I know why he did it. Because I don't feel like you can get away with that kind of stuff making the roughly 10th film in the Halloween franchise. I mean, you can't just keep making the same film over and over and over. And he was, again, trying to do something different. And if you and I are talking about Friday the 13th, I feel like our interests and tastes are similar. But if you and I were offered to make our Friday the 13th films, we're going to see where we're different.
Yeah.
And what you're, well, you've always wanted to know, you always wanted to show Elias. Personally, I'd love to, in this case, this is a bad choice because I'd like to show Elias, or at least make him, canon.
Yeah.
But you want to make a film all about him, and it's like, that's not important, Joel. The killer is Jason. Anyway, all right, let's get back to Friday the 13th. Sorry.
No, I agree with you. I think that, when you write a story, everybody's story should be different. Like, I'll give this example. When I was doing The Sweetest Angel 4, when I was writing that today, how can I make this a bit different than the last 3 that I did and include the same character? Oh, I know. Here's what I'll do. And it worked for me, but again, in the same sense, when you're writing a Friday the 13th, you need to remember the killer's Jason, unless you are going to remake the killer Pamela again, which some people have talked about. But the killer primarily, it's a franchise starts off with one killer, but then the second killer became the more popular character. I've talked about this. Dark Shadows is very similar history to franchises. Dark Shadows starts off with Victoria Winters, but the most popular character is Barnabas Collins, ever, all time. There's no changing that. And why would you? Like, it's a vampire, for God's sakes. But Friday the 13th, you don't need an explanation of why Jason's doing what he's doing. You can get creative with how people are coming to Camp Crystal Lake. I do think, I've talked to you about the missing 411. That's something they could get into with Jason Voorhees. And they sort of somewhat do with the remake a bit.
No.
With missing people, at least.
We don't talk about, there was no remake of Friday the 13th. We just decided to induct Derek Mears into the family. So I really hate the remake. I know what you're getting at. That's when you take over a franchise that has this many, be it Friday 13th, be it Halloween, other than maybe Star Trek, you're stuck with where you're at. Doing a prequel, in my opinion, unless you're avoiding Pamela, or Pamela is like a young child. The problem is it's like Red Dead Redemption 2. You knew right away what characters were going to live and going to die. And, without going into that too much, that's the problem with some of these prequels. I get you want to show the background and how we got here, but you make up these characters and we all know they're going to die.
Yeah.
Because they're never mentioned, they're never brought up. Obviously, and a lot of these, going back to going to Star Wars with the original trilogy and then the prequel trilogy, we knew Luke and Leia's mother was dead.
Yeah.
Why? She didn't even have a name.
Yeah.
And until the prequels came out, I always figured Darth Vader killed her, but that's a whole nother story. So, going backwards and making Pamela the killer, personally, I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
One thing I always would like to have seen done, explored. I love urban legends,
Yeah.
not the film urban legends. That's okay, but in general, I love urban legends. And when I was in college and when I got my sociology degree, if I had gone on and got a master's, I knew it was going to probably have something to do with urban legends because they fascinate me.
Yeah.
And what is Friday the 13th but an urban legend / morality play?
Yeah.
You have premarital sex. What happens? You die.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you look at that, and what I probably, again, our mystical movies that we're making, would that be the focus of my film? Probably not. But would it be in there? Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like I think there's a lot of things you could play with Friday the 13th. Again, I know they're I guess what is it? The Peacock's on a prequel or whatever, or origin. I don't know, but it's like, okay, you don't really need to explain a bunch of things. You don't. I mean, less is best with explanation. Uh,
It's like I'm going to pick a bad example on purpose. Anybody that's watched this and has heard me talk, my favorite horror film is Dawn of the Dead, 1978. They announced the remake of it. There was, short of anyone connected with the original film and their friends and family and loved ones, there was going to be very few people much more critical of a remake of Dawn of the Dead than me. And I went and saw it, and you know what? It wasn't half bad.
yeah.
But that was that whole when they were going through. They didn't call them remakes, reimaginings.
Yeah.
But you take the title of something, in this case, Dawn of the Dead, or what you were just talking about, Camp Crystal Lake,
Yeah.
and then there's a story you want to tell. But after bringing us in and getting us invested using that title, then you want us to just divorce any feelings and expectations we have from that title that you're using, so you can tell whatever it is the story is you want. It's like, why don't you just come up with your own shit and not do this? It's like Smallville. I how many? It's like I don't really care about young Clark Kent. I don't really care. And there was a Krypton show. So I don't really care about, if you're going to make a Superman show, make a Superman show, which they'll argue it wasn't a Superman show. But I just, unless your prequel has a point, like you're doing Camp Crystal Lake and you find out Elias is immortal and train Jason to be a hunter, that's, I don't know how much I like that, but rather than just taking something and slapping a different paint job on it with a different name, if you will.
Man, pretty soon we're gonna find out Elias Voorhees is one of the clouds, and he's he only could kill by cutting off his head. No.
Did you do you know the original ending to part 6, right?
No, what was it?
After they get Jason back in the water and Tommy and the pretty little blonde get together and go have 3 kids or whatever. The camera comes back to the graveyard where Jason was, and that same caretaker's there, and he turns and looks, and he's like, "Oh, Mr. Voorhees, I didn't know you was there. I was just fixing up, taking care of Jason here, just like you pay me to do." And I'm paraphrasing all this. That my memory may be off a little bit. And apparently, Elias looks there, and he looks down the grave, and somehow he can tell that's not Jason. And he looks at the caretaker, and the caretaker's like, starts saying a bunch of crap. I'm just doing the best I can, and I can't remember if Elias kills him or not, but somehow the name Elias Voorhees comes out, and the implication is the next film will be Elias getting revenge for Jason, and I've just always felt like there's got to be something there about Elias, something mystical, demonic, extra human. I don't know, but vaguely somewhere there's got to be something there. Hopefully not a Rosemary's Baby kind of deal with Jason being Adrian, but there was something there, and I just the character fascinates me, and we don't ever find out anything about him.
And the thing about that is, too, you could have really had some fun with that, and instead of having Kane Hodder behind the mask, you could have had Kane Hodder just standing there being Elias Voorhees. That'd have been a lot of fun.
I've actually heard people say that Kane Hodder, that they don't think Kane Hodder's intimidating, and it's like, have you looked at him? Now, I've never met the man. I have some friends that have met him, and every person I've ever talked to or read talks about what a great guy Kane Hodder is.
Yeah.
But also, they're like, he'll be sitting there joking with you or talking, and then he does that. He does it, and he turns to Jason, and they're like, "Oh shit, did I go too far?" And then they'll start laughing or something, So yeah, Kane Hodder is Elias Voorhees. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And as Jason, and Elias brings him back somehow.
Yeah, I mean, I would have watched an Elias Voorhees Friday the 13th movie. I would have. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if you really want to go a different direction and at the end of a sixth installment, I'd have been all for it. Because again, we've seen Jason this many times. Okay, we've seen Pamela once, twice if you count three, heading to three. But Elias, we haven't really seen him, and I mean, he gets a mention, but that's it. He just gets a mention. He doesn't get seen. I do remember that. Now you said about it 6. Yeah, I read they showed the storyboard artwork of it, which was really cool. Yeah,
there's a novelization of 6 that I've lost over the years. I wished I had it. It talks about how Jason had this amazing regeneration ability, and when he went to school, he wasn't mute in that he couldn't talk, but he didn't speak. And like there was this one kid making fun of him because we see how Jason looks before he becomes Jason. And I forget, there was like a bully that was rough like that, and then like before too long, suddenly the bully, for some reason he would never say, stuck his hand into a garbage disposal unit and turned it on. Wonder how that happened.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Okay, I'm gonna throw you some quick questions.
Yeah.
Favorite Friday the 13th?
Oh my god. My favorite all time is part 6.
Good answer. Favorite kill?
Oh my god. My favorite kill actually takes place in the original. It's actually the axe sequence where in the bathroom where you just see the light. I love Pamela Voorhees' the axe, how they handle that. That was really cool. It's really gory. It's a fun kill.
Is there anyone that gets killed that you wouldn't kill?
Yes. Part 6, the girl's dad.
The sheriff?
Yeah. Simply because there are characters you want to hear say, I was fucking wrong. And that's the character you wanted to hear say it.
Yeah, it'd been nice if like he had like broke legs or something. And he's like, I'm sorry, Tommy, you were right.
Yeah.
Favorite Jason actor?
Oh, shit. I love Kane Hodder because he did such a great job, but I'm going to go with the final chapter.
I
forget his name.
Is that King Kersner?
I believe so.
Yeah. Kane Hodder's up here.
Yeah.
Below him for me is probably C.J. Graham, who was in 6. And the guy that did Freddy versus Jason for that film. For a Friday the 13th film, I wouldn't have liked him, but for that film, I would have liked him. If you could cross Jason Voorhees / Friday the 13th over with any other horror franchise,
Oh, good.
or just franchise in general, without getting ridiculous, like I don't want to see Jason Voorhees and Captain Kirk.
I did I did a story, okay, for fun, because because when does Friday the 13th happen in these movies? With a full moon. So I always wanted to see Jason take on a werewolf.
Good choice.
So, being a Dark Shadows fan, as a story I did Underneath the Light of the Full Moon for my blog, and I took Chris Jennings and I brought him to Crystal Lake because he hears that Crystal Lake is abandoned. He's going there to get away from civilization, to get away from people. He figures if I'm not around anybody, I can't hurt anybody. Unbeknownst to him that the place is, Jason roams the area, and then there are kids coming up there to keep the camp open still. And one of the girls is related to one of the Christies that's left alive. And Chris Jennings is standing there. It's like there's a cloud over the full moon. And he gets stabbed with a machete in the stomach by Jason. And then the cloud lifts. And you see his eyes. He looks at the girl and he says, "Run!" And you see his hands start to change. And there's a fight. But I make it a fun fight between Jason and a werewolf.
For anyone that doesn't know, who is Chris Jennings?
Chris Jennings is a character from Dark Shadows who was cursed. Well, his great grandfather Quentin Collins was cursed to be a werewolf. The curse was passed down to him as a man.
I only know who Chris Jennings is from the Dark Shadows Daybook by our friend Patrick McRae, available on Amazon as an ebook and a physical book, and we give it highest marks.
We'll leave a link.
Mine would be Jason versus Michael.
Nice.
I don't know how to do it, and I've never been able to come up with a setting that was satisfactory. But I think you have to have the two big guys. I do like your werewolf idea. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Even where you're talking about it, I thought, what about the blonde lady from the end of The Howling? She's on the run, and she goes to Crystal Lake. That played by Dee Wallace Stone.
Yeah.
There was something else I was going to ask you. Is there a director, living or deceased, that you would have liked to have done a Friday the 13th film?
Director. Oh God. I tell you, well, he's already done a Friday the 13th, but the guy who did 6, I'd like to see him get another crack at it. I really would.
McLaughlin?
Yeah, Sean McLaughlin. I know he's already done one, but for one who hasn't, you know what? Rob Zombie. Fuck it. Rob Zombie.
Either George Romero.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, of course, he's now gone. And I cannot say this man's name right. Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
I would love to see him do a Friday the 13th film. And it's like, just, yeah. I would love to see him do one. Mine's 6. My favorite. We talked about who my favorite is. I think I answered favorite kill. It's so cheesy, but I'm gonna be honest. The harpoon gun in 3 with the 3D effect as the harpoon. Sorry, I was going to my box here. Coming in, just cause it's kind of ridiculous, but it's also so awesome.
Because here's the thing with that. That's something you would see in a James Bond movie. Like it literally coming at you.
And every time I watch it now, I forget when it crossed over. In my head, I hear Jason going, "I think he got the point."
Yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry, she got the point.
Now, a character from a non-horror setting who I'd just like to see go up against Jason, because it would just be funny because the character is insane. Would be Murdoch from MacGyver. That dude's crazy.
That guy.
Yeah, that dude's fucking crazy.
James Bond.
James Bond.
James Bond. See here now, the CIA has lost a lot of people going into there. They've asked us to help. And the thing is, though, in my mind, nobody defeats Jason in Camp Crystal Lake. He knows the terrain best. That's his area.
Well,
it's almost there was a role-playing game called Feng Shui, which dealt with these little areas. They call them Feng Shui sites, and each one like gave you a little bit of power if you held it, if you controlled it. And one of the things that somebody wrote online was that Camp Crystal Lake was a Feng Shui site, and that's why nobody could defeat Jason, because he controlled it, and the power flowed into him. And I realize that's a role-playing game and all that, but that to me that's part of it. Not necessarily the whole Feng Shui, the energy flows into him, but that's his area, that's his place, that's his thing. Nobody defeats him there. Rambo.
Yeah.
Rambo versus Jason.
Yeah. Rambo versus Jason would be awesome. Oh my god. I was trying to think what I was going to say to you about oh yeah, James. See, if you put James Bond in Camp Crystal Lake, all the women camp counselors are getting nailed by 007. No, there's going to be no use for the other men.
Well, that's why they're sending him there, because that's going to ping Jason's radar, and they're going to go, we don't have to wait for Jason to show up, but with 007 there, we'll find him in no time.
That's for sure, because 007 will be in the cabin nailing all the women really fast. That'll be too. Oh, God, that'd be great.
Any of the Friday the 13th you don't care for?
See, I don't hate Jason X. I just feel they should have done a better job explaining that it took place, at what point it was taking place. That they should have explained that this was, okay, even though we haven't made the movie yet, this is set after Jason versus Freddy.
But according to their timeline, he was captured by the military by then.
Yeah, it's like that's sort of my thing. It's like it's not I hate the movie. It's I hate the laugh of, like, how did we get to this point in time? That's my biggest issue. Other than that, I enjoy the movie. So
yeah,
here's when I watch it, I'll skip over that beginning.
I'll watch it just because it's got David Cronenberg, and that's hilarious to see him in a Friday the 13th film. He would have been a good director to do one back around that time. He had some crazy ideas, and I mean that in a great way. Mm-hmm. But the time, that's why you can't tie Toxic Waste Baby, Future, and in the remake and Jason, you can't tie all those together. So you just, those are just stories people made up.
Even though he does some crazy video games, and his ideas are often so fucking I would love, just for the hell of it, because he takes so fucking long to do shit. I would love for Todd Howard to pitch a Friday the 13th story. If you don't know who that is, he's done the Fallout games for Bethesda, and nobody, and I mean this sarcastically, nobody gets a game on time and under budget like Todd Howard.
What's his name?
Todd Howard.
Oh, I thought you're saying Todd Howe. I was gonna be like, there's a weather guy down here. His name's Todd Howe.
Yeah, Todd Howard. There was like I'm gonna exaggerate, 200 endings to Fallout 3. There weren't, but there felt like it.
Kind of like Return to the King, where you're going, okay, is this movie over yet?
That would be Todd Howard's Friday the 13th. It would, and thankfully, it would never end. There would be deleted scenes for the deleted scenes. That's what there would be. Fucking shit. There would be whoever the studio would have to ship it. What installment are we at again? Because we have this many deleted scenes and just be fucking that crazy. So just for the fun of it, Todd Howard. But all seriousness for a writer, because I feel he got cheated for Halloween. And I don't know I hope he'll get to do a Halloween. But Steph Hutchinson is really a smart writer. He knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. I think he would do it right. And I know he'd do a Halloween Night Dance is a good read. Check it out if you ever. But very, very smart writer. We should get Patrick McRae to write a Friday the 13th movie.
Oh. Here's the thing. Patrick really is one of the smartest people I've ever met. And he is sharp as the sharpest knife. When we first started doing role-playing games together, he used to irritate me because somebody would say something and I would have a joke forming in my head, and I got just about to where I'm going to say the joke, and he's already saying the joke and it's even better. And I'm like, ugh. So yeah, Patrick's Friday the 13th, it would either be amazing or it would be Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, or amazingly Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
I'd watch it.
Definitely watch that several times over.
Yeah, we all would. Is there anything you want to add about our buddy Jason Voorhees?
He's just a misunderstood, slightly brain damaged little guy who just loves his mother and wants you to get the hell out of his camp and leave him alone. You do that and you'll be fine and he'll be fine.
Yes. And listen, if you're going to have somebody track Jason Voorhees down, have it be Butch Rosenbalm. He's brave enough to do it.
I'm not going into Camp Crystal Lake. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Oh my God! So next,
he's told me, don't fight anybody uglier than you. They've got less to lose.
That is true. Thankfully, I think I'm there on Jason's level. I think I could take him. Boss. No. What are we doing? Are we doing anything next week? Because I know it's Thanksgiving and all
that. Let's check with Patrick and see about Major Dundee.
Okay.
If you want to make up a chat and just because I mentioned it to him on here and I think he saw it, but I don't know if he's had a chance to respond yet. But let's do a three-way chat. God, that sounds horrible. Do it includes all of us and see what next Friday's looking like.
All right, we'll do that for sure. For Major Dundee, we've watched it for this week, but I'll watch it again next week. It's a great Western to watch. It's something you want to rewatch. Filmed and set around Mexico. Fun times.
I have lots of notes.
Oh, Jesus.
Lots of comments, things to say.
Butch Rosenbaum is slowly turning into Todd Howard right before your eyes. But I can't wait to hear him, honestly. That's going to be a lot of fun. For Resident of Call, I'm Joel Sades. That's Butch Rosenbaum. We hope you enjoyed our Friday the 13th Jason Voorhees conversation. We'll see you guys next Friday. Have a good one, Butch.
Oh.
Bye, buddy.